Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit. Okay, everybody, welcome to Live from the Heartland again. I'm Michael James, and regular listeners to our show know that El Paso is another city besides Chicago that comes up a lot. I've been going down there since 2002 to participate in basketball in the barrio, in the Segundo Barrio, which merges basketball for young people with border culture. And we've talked to people like Beto O'Rourke and Russ Bradford and Steve Yellen. And El Paso is a wonderful city. It's an interesting place. And while I was at the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest, one of the people who was looking at my photographs, which had a label, El Paso, told me that she was from El Paso. And when she told me what she did there, I said, well, how would you like to come on the Live from the Heartland show? And so I present to you all the one and only Emma Brown. And hello to you, Emma Brown.
Hi, hello.
So you told me that you work for Annunciation House now, and that you are very much involved with what refugees are experiencing on the border. How about you tell us a little bit about what's going on the border and what has changed on the border?
Sure. Well, that's a big question. And first of all, I just wanted to be clear that I worked for Annunciation House for about 2 years, since around 2021. And I just finished a contract with them. So at this time, I am not employed by them, and I don't speak as a representative of them or anything like that. But for the past 2 years, my entire life was pretty much dedicated to coordinating shelters for asylum seekers on behalf of Annunciation House. Because as people are pretty well aware, El Paso is a major crossing point for refugees, asylum seekers who are coming up from Mexico, but also increasingly countries like Venezuela, Colombia, Central and South American countries, as well as the occasional people who are finding their way over from Turkey, China, Ukraine, and many of those people bottleneck in Ciudad Juarez and then come through El Paso. And Annunciation House, for more than 4.5 decades, has tried to be a respite center for people like that during the time that they're passing through El Paso.
Emma, how did you come to end up in El Paso and working in this area of, I guess, human rights and social justice issues?
I came to El Paso specifically to volunteer for Annunciation House as a full-time volunteer, which I did because I had a pre-existing interest in immigration, and I had volunteered for 3 months for another organization in the UK that today is called Choose Love and used to be called Help Refugees. It was located in the north of France in Calais. And I learned a lot about global immigration at that time. And I said, wow, I really want to go back to my own country that I'm a citizen of and learn about what's affecting immigration at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Well, let me follow up on that global immigration, because I think that what probably will become an issue in the upcoming presidential election here in the States is immigration. I mean, the Republicans use it. The Democrats use it in some ways. There's been a pretty big failure over a number of years to deal with it. But it's not just an issue here on the southern border of the United States. It's a global issue, as you say.
And I wondered if someone who's very much in tune with the immigration question, if you could give us a little paragraph, so to speak, about the global situation on immigration and perhaps the causes.
Oh my goodness. It's a big question. Where to start? The people often ask me about how European immigration is different from US-Mexico immigration. And the thing is that on the surface, there are many differences about what's happening, but at the root level, it's always the same issue. And truly, at the end of the day, it just stems from the consequences that we see down the line from imperialism, from colonialism, from extracting resources for generations from other countries, and then turning around and being surprised when people from those countries, are seeking the benefits that we experience living in so-called first world countries.
What's it like for the people who are coming to the border? And you probably were there when there was some change, when Biden changed the regulations in the terms of whatever's going on, people getting into the country or not. What's the daily experience people have? What do you observe? What do you want to call people's attention to?
Well, the biggest thing that you mentioned was the change right now, because I've only been working for Annunciation House for like a tiny portion of their existence. And I can tell that for many, many years, it was like the role of immigration in El Paso was very different, and it was far more low key. The border was less militarized, and for instance, Annunciation House mostly was just a single, very simple little house run by Catholic students who gave shelter to undocumented day laborers. But in the past decade, or even in the past like 4 or 5 years, the immigration landscape has changed so rapidly, and everybody is trying to keep up, including like Department of Homeland Security is trying to keep up, and the shelters are trying to keep up, because the kinds of people migrating have changed and increased. And the way that legislation changes about who is permitted to cross the border and when and how, just since I've been there in the past 2 years, feels like it gives you whiplash, because the different administrations' responses totally change people's lives while they're trying to cross. And yes, if you want to talk about like a really typical experience for somebody at this current point in time, Biden's administration created the CBP1 app, which honestly I think is well-intentioned and a creative way for people to be able to use their phone that they have to schedule a meeting with immigration that allows them to come through in an orderly manner. However, it simply isn't logistically possible for them to have enough meetings for the amount of people who want to cross. And there are other kinds of structural barriers in place. And at the end of the day, if you are really fleeing an unstable situation in your country, it's not safe for you to wait sometimes months and months, especially if you're a vulnerable non-Mexican in Ciudad Juarez, where you're extremely susceptible to trafficking and kidnapping. Those people end up waiting months and months trying to get a CBP1 appointment, trying to do things so-called the right way. And very often, ultimately, one too many things go wrong for them in Juarez, where the sheltered conditions are not super great. And they choose to just take a chance and cross the river and, try to go over the barbed wire. Yeah,
we've seen a lot of those pictures. I had someone who works in Juarez, lives in El Paso, tell me when I was just recently there in June, that while we are not happy with the president's new directives around the border, we saw it as, this person actually saw it as something that needed to happen now for the election, but certainly would like to see a better situation. And I'm wondering, if you were in charge of the border, what changes you might encourage to happen? If that's too big a question, we'll go on to something else. But I mean, what would the masses of people who are concerned be calling for our next president? Hopefully, and it's not the guy who once was the president.
Oh man, it's such a good question. Because it's just a rock and a hard place, because we want politicians to understand that when they see immigration and they see the border as merely a political tool, a way to try to prove to their voters that they are hard or that they're, supportive of immigrants. It has really real consequences for people who have no idea that they are being, used kind of as political pawns. We meet all of these people, for instance, who have come to our shelter, and then they hear about Greg Abbott's state busing program, where he will bus people out of El Paso into sanctuary cities.
We have a lot of those folks in Chicago.
Yeah. Yes, you do. You absolutely do. Abbott charters those buses, pays for them to arrive in Chicago in a chaotic manner that doesn't involve a lot of planning to make things more difficult for you. And I've talked to so many of those families who have no idea what's going on with the political situation in America, and they just want to go to a city where they hear that maybe somebody's going to give them a chance, where they might be able to get into a shelter, and somebody will, let them talk to a pro bono immigration lawyer for 2 seconds to tell them what the heck all of this paperwork means. So that's to say, I would try to remind politicians that they're really crafting policies that have an impact on actual people's lives at the end of the day. But I'm not sure how useful that is to say to a politician.
Yeah, that kind of goes in one ear, comes out the other. While you were talking, you mentioned how the border in the past was less militarized. And one of the things that I've observed over the last 20 some odd years of going down to El Paso every year and going to Juarez a lot is, when I first went down, there were actually I had met people who crossed the border every day. They come to work in El Paso, they go back. That's become much more difficult. And there is whereas you could really just see across the Rio Grande, Rio Bravo River to Juarez from El Paso. Now there is this steel fence that goes on for mile after mile. I don't know who paid for it, if it's the thing that the orange guy put through. I know there's talk of trying to continue to build it, but it's very sad. What other ways besides those fences do you see the militarization of the border?
Wow. Well, the fence is just the physical manifestation of border policy, and it is really like affects your mental state when you're in El Paso, I think. And I think for people who live there for a long time, it just becomes noise that they don't think about anymore. But when you visit for the first time, you're like, wow, something is really going on in this place, because you can't just go about your life and live normally without seeing the border wall and seeing the activity of Border Patrol every day all around you. But that is also just the most surface level thing. But like really the border is enforced in much more insidious ways, in the paperwork, in the withholding of benefits from asylum seekers, the ways that they come in and are barely educated about what's happening to them. So of course they're going to miss their court dates. Of course they're going to struggle to pay for a lawyer. I often think that it's really those less exciting, less visible things that are the biggest barriers to people. It's the fact that, like, to fill out the asylum application, it has to be submitted in English, which means that you have to work with a lawyer to translate it.
Yeah. Emma Brown, let me ask you, how do you think the people of El Paso have responded? I'm sure there's a lot of people doing good and contributing. I'm sure there are people who are angry and PO'd. Can you give us a little sense of what you see among the population of your fellow El Pasoans?
I think El Pasoans are really special. The people who really stick around there for generations. Certainly a lot of people are just going about their lives and they don't care about the border at all, or, they would rather it not, cause them so many problems all the time and have the traffic to go to Juarez back up I-10 all the time. But every time that there's a surge in immigration, and 2 winters ago at Christmas time, there was a surge, and shelters couldn't hold people. People ended up on the street. Yeah. Regular people who don't know anything about immigration will turn out and try to help people. So that's what I've seen.
That's good to hear. I love El Paso, and I like visiting there. We met at my photo booth at the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fair here in Chicago's Rogers Park. And one of the things that I learned about you is that you are an artist yourself. And I wondered if in the remaining minute or so we have, if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about the artwork you do and maybe your hopes and dreams for the future.
Thank you. It's kind of you to mention that, but yes, I'm an artist. I do a variety of things, but what I've kept up with during the past couple of years while being extremely busy doing this other thing I never expected to do, working in shelters. The main thing I do is that I just carry a camera wherever I go, and I take photographs, and I would really like to develop a body of work about my experience in El Paso, but man, I'm still thinking about it.
Well, that's good. Do you have a website or anything you'd like to, or Instagram you'd like to share with the viewers and listeners?
Sure, thank you. My Instagram is Instagrandma Brown, and my name is Emma Brown, and I have a website that is called EmmaBrownMakesArt.com. But may I also say, if anybody hears this and their interest is piqued in talking about immigration in El Paso, please look up Annunciation House. It's hard to spell, but if you Google it enough, you can find it. Annunciation House.
No, it's good. I looked it up. It said, in a gospel spirit of service and solidarity, we accompany the migrant, refugee, and economically vulnerable peoples of the border region through hospitality, advocacy, and education. We place ourselves among these poor so as to live our faith and transform our understanding of what constitutes more just relation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really glad that we got to meet each other. I don't know how long you'll be in Chicago, but I know you're going back to El Paso, and maybe I'll see you down there next year at Basketball in the Barrio over at the Armejo Center in the wonderful Segundo Barrio. Y mucho gusto y gracias.
Thank you.